Hi, everyone. It's Julia back with another episode of the Ethical Consumer Podcast. I am here with Alicia Simmons of the Frontier Co-op in Norway, Iowa. Thanks for chatting with me today, Alicia.
Yeah, of course. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm glad you're happy to be here too. We have matching plants in our backgrounds, whether you can see that on the video or not. So I'm glad we have mirroring plants. Now, Alicia, you are how about you tell us about it? What do you do at Frontier, my dear?
Sure, absolutely. Like you said, I'm Alicia Simmons. I'm the sustainability manager at Frontier Co-op. So basically what that means is that I sort of help set our goals for the company. I sort of, keep in touch with networks that are doing similar things in the industry, trying to make sure that our internal teams, the people who actually do all the work, the engineers and the internal groups that we have there, have the resources that they need, both internally and externally, to be successful in accomplishing our sustainability goals.
Excellent. So you are the mastermind behind making everything work, essentially, as far as sustainability goes.
I wouldn't say mastermind. Maybe the taskmaster is more like that. But I love it's a wonderful gig. It's actually one of those amazing professions that you didn't know existed, when you were young, and suddenly you find yourself doing a job that you love, and one that you may not have even known was a thing like 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So it's great. It's a wonderful opportunity.
It's amazing how many people don't know. Even I think today, the sustainability coordinator position is kind of a newly implemented thing for a lot of businesses. We did a live episode kind of in the beginning of the podcast with my friend Rachel Beck, who is the sustainability coordinator for Single Speed Brewing in Waterloo and Cedar Falls, Iowa. And Rachel has she decided to move to Florida. Gosh darn it. She's like, I'm done with winter. So she is no longer in that position, but that was kind of how she landed that as well. She didn't really know that was a position that was available, and Single Speed didn't originally have that in their roster of job openings, and they kind of added it essentially, I want to say like 3 or 4 years ago. So it's a growing career.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, so when I moved back to Iowa, I actually moved here without a job. And I was hired on with Frontier, not actually even in a sustainability role, but as the executive assistant to the CEO. So I worked very closely with, management and the board in that role, but really just in more of an administrative capacity than anything else. So over time, though, I joined and ended up heading the company's green team. And my boss, the CEO, sort of figured out that this was something that I really cared a lot about. And at the time, there was really nobody in that sustainability manager role, to your point. Over the years, there had been a VP of sustainability who had done a lot of the groundwork in terms of making sure that we were sort of laying that sort of framework down from the beginning. But that role sort of fell off when that person retired. And then since then, there really had only been maybe one or two different people who'd stepped into that sustainability-esque role. And either they moved on, or they ended up becoming more focused into one specific area of sustainability. Obviously, sustainability is a very broad topic, so many people end up focusing their work on becoming, subject experts in like a very specific area. So for Frontier, a huge part of our sustainability journey and our impact really comes down to our sourcing, which we can talk about a little bit later. But Seth Petchers, who is our sustainable supply chain manager, had that background, and he had, that gave him he had some unique perspective and experience that really helped him sort of fill in that role. But ever since he had left, we didn't have a sustainability manager. So it really sort of left that open, for someone who was passionate and interested in continuously learning and pushing and growing and asking why not, to just go ahead and fill in.
The asking why not, I think, asking why and asking why not and how, and just like making that change, I think is so important. I love that you kind of just essentially fell into this role, but it's a role that you like love and are passionate about too.
Yeah, for sure. I'm very lucky, and I feel like every single day I get to learn something new, which is, I feel like I'm a lifetime student. I'm I'm back in school right now, actually, just because I
Oh,
love it. I love
goodness.
to sort of push and grow, and I don't know. I love asking those questions, those why not questions. So it's one of my favorite parts of my job.
So, what did you intend on doing? You said you moved back to Iowa. Did you do a stint at a university out of state, or were you just traveling and living?
Actually, it's kind of a very roundabout way of getting there, but I grew up in Cedar Rapids, and then I went to school down in Iowa City at the university, and I received my BA in English and classical languages, actually. Very, very useful. Actually, it is. Being a good writer helps with virtually everything. So I would not have changed that necessarily. But after I graduated, I moved out to Boulder, Colorado, and I lived out there for a few years. Um, and honestly, I wasn't doing anything related to sustainability. I was just sort of, living and looking for writing gigs, which are impossible to get anywhere, but especially in Boulder. It felt very hard to get there. So eventually, I ended up working at an accounting firm, of all things, with an English degree, because that makes sense.
It works.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where it's good to not pigeonhole yourself and to be open to whatever, comes your way, whatever opportunities come your way. And actually working at that accounting firm opened up a ton of doors for me. I would never have gotten the position at Frontier if I didn't have that background, if I hadn't sort of proven that while I am a good writer, I can also, do a lot of other things, and I can learn quickly, and I can be adaptable, and all of these sort of things. So that I think it was really key. And when I moved back, it was just really for family reasons. There was no like specific job or anything that I was coming back for, but it was just time for me to get back home to my family. So
Well, I'm glad you landed where you are, and it sounds it was like it was the perfect turn of events to land you with the job that you have and the change that you get to affect and help throughout Frontier Co-op.
yeah, absolutely. It's
Super.
been a really wonderful opportunity ever since.
Cool. So, since this was kind of a newer position or a rebirth of a position that used to be filled in certain capacity, but you mentioned that everyone was kind of in a niche as far as sustainability goes, and you focus on more of the overarching portion of sustainability throughout the entire co-op. And this is not like a small local co-op situation like some people may be familiar with when they see the word co-op, like getting fresh produce, and it's a cute little, certain ones are huge. The ones in Iowa City and Cedar Rapids are gigantic, but Decorah, Oneota Co-op in Decorah is a little bit smaller. I've been to one in Eau Claire with a friend of mine that was the smallest co-op, but the most beautiful, heartfelt co-op that I think I've ever been in. Some look like grocery stores, some look like cute little mom and pop shops. What is so special and so different about Frontier Co-op? Because you guys are kind of a big deal and huge.
Yeah, we have grown a ton, especially in recent years. But I think that that's one of the biggest sort of misunderstandings about co-ops in general, is that like the co-ops that people think of are the ones that you're talking about, which are basically retail co-ops, where it's, a whole community gets together and they decide that they support, organic and natural groceries primarily. That's usually how people think about it, which is good. But there are actually a number of different types of co-ops, and they exist all across the country, and more people belong to co-ops than they think they do. So some example, basically, I'm going to rewind for a second. So Frontier was originally formed as a co-op for the same reason that many people do, which is basically the idea that joining together with other people or other companies cooperatively, I should say, allows you to sort of bring together the resources that you need to bring some specific service or some specific product to be available to that group. So there are a lot of different types of co-ops that exist, including like ag co-ops. So members of an ag co-op would pay into that co-op so that they don't have to basically purchase all of their own processing equipment or transportation of their product and all that kind of stuff. So they all kind of work together to share resources in that way. in Iowa specifically, or in many rural areas, electric co-ops and phone co-ops are very big, where basically an entire community will come together and they will like pool resources to bring those services into their area. You'll see a lot of those across. You see them definitely in Iowa, but across rural America in general, and around the world, to be honest. Credit unions are actually a great example of co-ops that people don't even know they belong to, but credit unions are all co-ops as well. They're just financial co-ops. So I think it's just such a very unique model where, people are able to sort of band together and get something accomplished or achieve some sort of access to a resource that they wouldn't have otherwise, just because they are able to work cooperatively. And it allows you a lot of flexibility to do incredible things socially and environmentally, and just in mission-driven work, because you're not, responsible for reporting to these, shareholders who need a return on their dividends. Everybody sort of, I don't know, you all get together and you believe in similar things, and you can agree to sort of invest long-term in the success of the co-op, which means the success of the community. So it's a really special sort of structure. And I obviously recommend it. We're obviously big fans. So
Sure. That's not something I ever would have thought of, I guess. And I mean, Frontier Co-op also, it has a similar feel, but like you said, it's a cooperative, and you have your retail co-ops, and Frontier, you have herbs and spices and your own various food and essential oil lines. So it's the same idea, but done in a different way. And I'm almost wondering now, so I live in Cedar Falls, Iowa. People who are familiar with the podcast have heard me talk about it before. I'm almost wondering if our utilities started as a co-op situation, because we pay for garbage, recycling, water, electric, sewer, all of the things. Everything is through Cedar Falls Utilities, whereas just over in the next town where I used to work at a health food store, Waterloo, they have Mid-America, and you have to get your own phone provider, I think Mediacom. So I'm wondering if even Cedar Falls Utilities started as a co-op, because we have everything rolled into one happy, really fast internet speed little bundle, and it's great.
Well, yeah, you would have to look into it, but I don't know. I think they're a lot more common than people think, which is, not something that people expect. But Frontier is a very unique style of cooperative. I think the closest we've seen to our exact model is actually REI, which is another one that people don't really even think of as being a co-op, really. But we have that sort of that retail side. We sell our products to our wholesale customers, but it's for them to turn around and resell primarily. So we're owned by the retail stores who purchase our product from us and then resell it to consumers. So we actually have like 38,000 member owners across the US. And they're primarily, there are a lot of little, mom and pop grocers, or like natural grocers, that you see. New Pioneer, for instance, is a customer, a member owner. So there just aren't a whole lot of us that are sort of formed that way. The big co-ops that you see are like Organic Valley or Equal Exchange. Those are grower co-ops, and actually Equal Exchange is a worker co-op. I stand corrected. But Organic Valley and Ocean Spray is another big grower cooperative. Yeah.
Really? Ocean Spray cranberry juice and all of their cranberry stuff.
I know. Yeah,
oh my gosh.
Treetop is another big one. Blue Diamond Almonds, that's a co-op as well. So yeah, a lot of big ones, but they're they're almost all grower co-ops.
Huh.
So it's definitely a model that allows a lot of flexibility in terms of how you sort of interpret it. But yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. The health food store I just mentioned in Waterloo, actually, Greenfield's Health Food Center. I act like I still work there. It's been a couple years, but they still treat me like family. They are a member owner as well, actually. I would place some of the orders with one of your reps back in the day for herbs and spices and dip mixes, things like that. You guys have so much awesome stuff.
Yeah, there are a lot of products, so...
Hey guys, just wanted to hop on real quick and interrupt to let you know that we are hosting a giveaway with some of the fantastic guests we've had so far on the show. Head on over to our Instagram, the.ethical.consumer, to see how you can enter to win some fantastic products from Raw Street Coffee Roasters, Social Mixers Simple Syrup, Cassie Green Health Elderberry Syrup, Yellow Table Farm, Eco Lips, and 12 Tides. We'll be giving away 2 gift baskets. These are going to be wonderful stocking stuffers, wonderful gifts, and a wonderful way to treat yourself and experience some of the wonderful products you've heard about on our prior episodes. Head on over to Instagram, get your details, and get entered to win. Please leave us a review on iTunes if you haven't already. Go and check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Hint, those are some ways you can enter. And back to our show. So let's talk about that a little bit. You had said that in the very beginning, stewardship, dividends, cost savings, like what are the pillars? I'm now forgetting the word that you said in the very beginning. People over profit, perhaps it was something of that nature.
Maybe it's our purpose statement, that it's really this idea that doing good works. So, every company has their mission, values, purpose that really sort of guide everything that they do. And, we have always had this mission to nourish people and planet and to always be fair. That's something that's been with us from the very beginning. But our purpose statement has really sort of been refined over time. And in the last few years, we've really sort of like honed it into this idea that doing good works, that it's not just charity, that it's not, we're not a nonprofit. We are a for-profit company, even though we're a co-op. Those profits go back to our member owners instead of, shareholders or whatever. But we are still a for-profit company. So we really do believe, though, that by doing good in the world and making sure that we're having a positive impact on the people who, we touch both here in the U.S. and around the world and with our sourcing partners, and the impact that we have on the planet really does have a sort of positive impact on our bottom line, at the end of the day. Whether it's through, customers that are loyal to us and our brands and want to purchase our products because they believe in what we're doing, or they want to support our social giving or any of those things. Or if it's, our employees who are, dedicated to helping us continue to grow and evolve and push ourselves, like we were talking about earlier, people who are passionate about helping support our mission, or even oftentimes when it comes to environmental stewardship, a lot of those initiatives have cost savings benefits. So that, directly pays back. So yeah, like I said, I think our CEO is very pragmatic. He's got a big heart, but he's a very pragmatic person. And so it's very important that we're constantly pushing ourselves to prove out that what we're doing really does work for the company long term, and really does help ensure our long-term sustainability.
So it's not just what you're doing on paper, it's what you're doing behind the scenes as well, and making sure that it is indeed proven that this has an impact, not just like the fluffy marketing sustainability thing that I do believe everyone is trying to do good. Everybody is. They truly are. But there is a difference between, kind of the fluffy kind of thing and then the ground operations implementation.
Definitely. And there are some things that you do just because it's the right thing to do. Those things are a little bit harder for me to argue. I have to actually really make a good argument for those ones. But there are some things that you just do because it's just the right thing, But even in doing those things, you're still ensuring your own company's long-term success. Nobody wants to support a company that they know are taking advantage of their workers or, depleting a supply chain or dumping, waste into a nearby river or whatever. Nobody wants to support those people, those companies. So it is important that we bear that in mind, but it's an intangible a little bit. It's hard to sort of prove that out always. But that's sort of the job, to try to figure out what exactly that impact is, not only in terms of our impact on the world, but also what the impact of that work is on our bottom line. And I don't think that that's really a bad thing. Sometimes as a sustainability person, it can feel kind of like rotten or dirty to talk about like the financial bottom line. But really that's what it comes down to when you start. I mean, this is what they're teaching in school now, that, corporate social responsibility is these 3 pillars. And, it's not just people and planet. There has to be that profit component as well, in order to make sure that your company's still here in 10 years doing good in the world. So it is something that we have to constantly be mindful of and make sure that, every one of our environmental stewardship initiatives has to go through an NPV process. So like, for instance, we installed solar arrays at 3 of our 4 Iowa facilities back in 2018. And we made those arrays as big as we could based on the amount of energy they were going to be able to bring back into the company. But we are able to take a slightly longer payback because we're a co-op and because our members are invested in that mission and want to see things like solar panels at our facilities, But at the same time, even though we were able to take a 6 or 7 year payback, it still has to end up paying the company back actual dividends in the long term. It has to be able to pay for itself, and it has to be able to save us money in the long term. So, we weren't able to go 100% of our energy being covered by those solar arrays. We could have spent $14 million. I'm making that number up, but some, exorbitant amount of money, and built this huge array or purchased a windmill or something that like really wasn't truly going to pan out for us financially long term for the sake of environmental stewardship. But it's just not a responsible or even truly sustainable thing to do. So anyway, yeah, incremental growth.
I love it.
The goal.
And as far as, implementing things slowly too, when did you say you did the solar arrays? Was it 2016?
2018 is when they all went.
Okay. And that's one of those things too. I'll reference the single speed one again. They implemented solar panels as well within the confines. They actually have a recycled and historic site building that they're in, an old Wonder Bread factory. And they had to only, let's see, what was their stipulation? The solar panels could not be seen from the ground. Because it's a historic building, they had to preserve the aesthetic. And I think it was only for a certain amount of years. And I don't remember. I'm assuming to compensate for, or to consider growth and environmental changes and things like that. Like at some point, solar panels are the energy of the future. Solar, wind, what have you, more sustainable energy that they probably realize that they're going to need to break some rules eventually. But, Rachel had said they'd offset their cost at the Waterloo site by 100%, but the Cedar Falls, it's smaller. Their experimental brew site, those ones are still not covered by solar energy simply because, again, you have to think about getting the payback for the company. Like, it does have to be sustainable. You can't just install these gigantic arrays and be like, look at all the things we did, and we're closing in 2 years because that was a terrible idea. It's hard.
It is hard. It's a balancing act constantly. And also, I mean, it's important to remember, like, sustainability is more than anything a mindset of continuous improvement. That's what I always try to come back to with every presentation and new hire training and everything that we go through. Is really this idea that sustainability is this mindset of continuous improvement where you're constantly pushing, and like, what may not have been possible in 2017 when the team was, coming up with the plan for our solar arrays may be possible now, 3 years later. Technology and policy and regulation and pricing are constantly changing, especially when it comes to environmental stewardship. And so it's really important to keep your ear to the ground and keep learning. And keep pushing. And again, asking why not? Just because we made the right call 3 years ago doesn't mean it's the right call anymore. So it's important that we're looking at expanding now based on different storage solutions that might exist now that didn't exist then or weren't feasible financially then but are now. Lots of things. So as long as you keep pushing, incremental growth is great. You just have to make sure to not stop and just think that you have the right answer, because with sustainability, I feel like if you think you have the right answer right now, you're either wrong now or you're going to be wrong in 6 months or a year or 2 years. You can't just stop and say like, yeah, we figured that out, we're done. You have to just keep going. So, yeah.
So, what are some of the things that you guys have implemented in the time you've been there? Or, pardon, I don't know if I asked, what year did you start at Frontier?
I started in 2016, but then I didn't start the sustainability manager role until I want to say early 2018. So I'm only a couple years into this. Um, so yeah, I certainly cannot take credit for most of the amazing things that the company does. Solar, that was all done before my time. I was around for when it was actually implemented, but I didn't even work on it the first iteration. So they have done a really wonderful job putting that all together. But in terms of other things that have happened since I've been there, we do have a zero waste initiative. That didn't come from me, but I've done a lot of work on it with the green team and with leadership across the company. It's one of those really unique sustainability initiatives that really does impact every single person who works at the company and every decision that they make, which doesn't always happen. Solar is one of those things where, it happens, a group of engineers work on it, it's installed, a few people keep track of, progress and what it's producing and when it needs maintained or expanded. But other than that, most people just know it exists over there. But zero waste is something that every single person has to think about every single day, whether it's, while they're actually working on the line or in the offices or whatever, and disposing of, whatever waste it is that is being generated right in their workspace. But also, the wild card really comes when you start thinking about our shared spaces, our break rooms, our cafeterias, the times where people are not working, they're away from their work, they're taking their break. But we still have these policies to maintain. So the food and whatever that they're bringing in from outside of the company that they're bringing into these cafeterias, they have to figure out how to responsibly discard every single one of those products at the end of its life. So that's really the biggest challenge with that initiative for sure. But it's a great opportunity to get people to think very tangibly about their impact on the planet. So I love that initiative. It's somewhere that we're, again, continuously improving. We have an incredible sanitation team that is really dedicated to keeping the momentum going on that initiative. And that policy is something that I feel like is now just really ingrained in people. But it is something that we need to continuously think about how we're communicating, making sure we're having the appropriate waste streams in the appropriate places to make sure that we're giving people the tools that they need to make the right decision, if that makes sense. Yeah.
It's almost unfathomable to think about coordinating the interaction and the waste recycling or retrieval or repurposing for an entire company, but then bringing it down to your personal responsibility for every worker, every employee on your site. Like, that I feel like has to be, I mean, now that you've said that it's become a little bit more routine and ingrained with your peoples, but I mean, in the beginning, you really have to have everybody on board and everyone doing their part. And I feel like that's a really good message for the rest of the world. It's corporate responsibility, it's consumer responsibility, it's legislation responsibility. Like, the whole team has to be on board for that to really work. That's a really admirable and challenging thing, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Especially when it comes to waste, I think that's something that people think the most. Usually people think about energy and waste. Those are the two big ones when they think about sustainability. And part of it sort of plays into that idea of helping employees understand how to responsibly discard a product's packaging. As a consumer packaged goods company, we have a fundamental responsibility for what happens to our product packaging at end of life, which is a huge thing that we have been working on in the last couple of years. I would say, 60% at least of my sustainability time is dedicated to just packaging sustainability these days, because again, it's another thing where the technology is constantly changing. There are groups that are pushing, the envelope in terms of what's possible there. But even something as simple as labeling goes such a long way. I don't think it's a secret that the recycling industry in our country is just completely broken, just utterly broken. And I think a lot of people have a lot of concerns about whether or not their recycling, even at home, is actually being processed. There are a lot of rumors out there, and part of the reason that exists is because our whole system is so fractionated right now. Every single, city, every single community has their own separate material recovery facility. There's oftentimes, locally owned or whatever, or even like regionally owned, and they have their own rules based on their own processes and their own abilities, their own sort of ability to separate waste streams and who they're selling it to and all this sort of stuff. So something that, you said you were in Waterloo, right? Like something that might be curbside recyclable for me in Cedar Rapids might not be recyclable for you in Waterloo, or vice versa, which is craziness. We live an hour apart and we might not be able to do the same thing, with our home recycling. So anyway, a big part of the reason that exists is because of waste stream contamination. Basically this idea that we've all done it. And I always try to put new hires on the spot where I'm like, okay, so raise your hand if, but everybody's done it. It's called aspirational recycling. And the idea is that when you finish a product, a water bottle or something, and you are ready to dispose of it at end of life, and you're not entirely certain if it's recyclable or not. A water bottle is a bit of a bad example because those are almost all recyclable, but think about a chapstick tube. Like I've got a chapstick tube, and then when you finish, what happens there? Like, is it recyclable? Is this label recyclable? It seems like there's like a little thing inside it that may or may not have metal in it. Is that recyclable? I don't know. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw it in my curbside recycling, my mixed use recycling, and just hope that it ends up where it's supposed to be. Like if it's not supposed to go in there, somebody along the way, they'll pull it out and they'll make sure it goes to the right place, right? Like what's the worst that could happen? Well, the worst that could happen is that is multiplied by hundreds of millions of people, and then all of a sudden there's all this trash, all this landfill waste in our recycling streams. And MRFs, material recovery facilities, who are barely making money as it is, just razor thin margins there, now have to hire all of these people to actually be on these lines pulling trash out constantly. They're not able to get as much money for their material that they're reselling to reprocessors, because it's not worth as much. Those reprocessors know that they can purchase virgin material for cheaper and know that it's high quality versus this reprocessed material, which no one's buying. Not no one, but there's not as much of a market for because they can't guarantee the quality of it. And it's also more expensive now because you've got all of that labor and the additional material and additional time that goes into actually separating them out. So that's really fundamentally, when it comes down to it, that's the biggest issue. So that was a ramble, but ultimately the goal is we've recently, in the last year or so, we joined an organization or program, I should say, called How to Recycle. Are you familiar with that?
Yes,
program?
Actually, I've seen it on. It's really funny. I have a wrapper in my bag that I'm going to reach out to this company. Maybe they have one. This one does not, but I know a couple of the boxes that I've gotten recently, like my chickpea noodles and things like that. Gluten and my tummy don't get along that well. So we do chickpea noodles and we do red lentil noodles. And I noticed it not that long ago. It's awesome that you've mentioned this, that there's a little recycling symbol and then it says what parts are recyclable and how. It's great. I'd actually like to do a mini-sode episode on that. Now that I'm thinking about that, maybe I'll plan for it to come out the Thursday after yours. There we go, guys. Watch for that one. Yeah, how to recycle.
Yeah, so it started out as a program of the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, but it's gotten big enough very quickly that it's sort of now moved back under their parent umbrella called Green Blue Institute. But the idea is basically all CPG companies, retailers from across the country all agree to, around the world I should say, all just simply agree to speaking the same language when it comes to our recycling claims and our recycling labeling. Gone are the days of these ambiguous little triangles with a number in there that nobody understands and nobody knows what to do with. But rather we all agree to just use the same labeling that is very user friendly, consumer friendly. They understand every single component of a package has its own separate tile. It has any specific instructions, like if you have to clean it out first, or if you have to make sure to leave the cap on for a bottle or something like that. And then it lets you know if it's widely recyclable, or if it's, if you need to check locally. They have their little website on there, and you can go in and you can enter your zip code and see if it's accepted locally. Or if it's store drop off, for instance, with flexible films or whatever, if you can drop it off at your local, co-op or your local, I was going to say Hy-Vee, but I don't know how far your reach is here. Local grocery store.
It's Midwest local. They have them in Minnesota now.
Perfect. But anyway, it's just helping make sure that we're helping clean up our part of, in that whole recycling problem. And hopefully by making sure that our waste streams are cleaner, those material recovery facilities will be able to make more money. They will not have to have as much time and labor invested in separating those waste streams, so they can make money and they can grow and expand and increase their own capabilities and things like that. Because honestly, it's sort of a point of contention in some places, but it's difficult to expect MRFs to continue to adapt and evolve and innovate when they have such razor thin margins. It's just not fair for us to put it all on them. So it's really important that we're each sort of playing our role, both from an individual consumer perspective, but also definitely from a company perspective. So like as a consumer packaged goods company or a retailer, I think all of Target private label, and then I think all of Walmart private label, we're going to have those how to recycle logos on everything from then on. I think all of I forget. I think it's Annie's or Amy's. And I don't know. Anyway, there are a lot of them. You can go to their website. You can see all the brands that are doing it. There are too many to count. So I'm really happy at the amount of traction that it's gotten in the last few years alone. So.
I've started to see it on more and more packages too. The one that I'm specifically thinking of that I'm holding in my hands awkwardly here, obviously it's not actually in my hands. It was a box of red lentil noodles from Target. And I am a Target shopper. I like Target. I am basic. I like to think I'm the cool kind of basic, but yeah. But I started noticing it a lot, and I've actually just remembered that the package that I pulled out of my bag here, it doesn't have it on it because it's compostable. So,
there is a how to compost too. They recently expanded into a how to compost label. I don't know as much about that because we don't really have any compostable packaging, but
sure.
It does exist. I know it exists.
Well, I'm going to look into that. Thank you. Happy day. And it's funny that you mentioned too, even just being like an hour away, our recycling centers and processors and sellers and buyers are completely different. Even Cedar Falls, Waterloo. So I live in Cedar Falls. Greenfield's Health Food Center, the health food store, is in Waterloo. And it's this 9-minute drive from my house. The towns literally butt up right against one another on the street that I grew up in. And you cannot tell that you're going from one town to the next, other than there's a small white sign that looks very similar to a street sign. And yet the neighbor over here and the neighbor over here have completely different utilities and recycling. Actually, Cedar Falls Utilities does butt in a block or 3, I think, just with how power lines and whatnot are drawn. But it's incredible. And talking to my friend Kat from Social Mixers, she was on the show in the beginning too. She grew up in Nolens, and after Katrina, they stopped accepting glass. She's like, "Yeah, Dad, you can recycle it." Her simple syrup bottles. He's like, "No, babe. They don't take glass anymore." She's like, "What do you mean they don't take glass?" He's like, "Yeah, Nolens said it's not. It's actually cost prohibitive to recycle glass, but you can take it 2 hours away and they'll recycle it there." But nope, completely different situation. It's kind of gnarly, and it makes it complicated. So I'm glad that there's how to recycle and how to compost, that is not a number in the recycling symbol because no one remembers which numbers go in what bins or what are actually possible to recycle or not. Like I've tried my life and I can't remember. Just tell me where to put it, please.
It's okay. There are like a few that I remember, but there are like 7 or 8 of them, and I feel like the last 5 I just don't know.
Right. Nope, not so much. So you guys have at Frontier, and I know this is not as much your realm as the sustainability manager, but you have a couple different lines within Frontier Co-op. You have our Acacia, you have Simply Organic, and then you have your typical what you would expect to be in a retail co-op. I remember I'm picturing looking through the catalog at Greenfields right now. Even you're talking about employees and workers bringing reusable containers, and you sell those to your member owners too. I remember seeing metal tins. I think I have a few like a robot tea steeper, something like that. That it's you guys have everything, man. But our Acacia and Simply Organic lines are two that are yours specifically, and you have some really great initiatives built around those to give back to employees and places where the employees are working and where you're getting your ingredients from. Could you talk a little bit about the sustainability and the giving back that those lines do?
Yeah, definitely. So, just to clarify a little bit, so we have 3 brands that are actually housed by Frontier. So Simply Organic is our all organic line of herbs and seasonings and basically food prep or meal prep solutions, things like that. That's the one I think that people see most frequently in their grocery stores. Frontier Co-op brand is a smaller brand. It does packaged, bottled spices and herbs, but we also do a bunch of bulk out of that one. So you probably would have at your co-op, you would have seen, us fill up that bulk area. So teas, all that nutritional yeast, things like that. So lots of different things there. And then we sell all of these, jars and things like that to be able to sort of distribute or store those sort of bulk products or use those loose leaf teas and things like that. So that's kind of what you're referring to. And then Acacia is our aromatherapy, or I guess essential oil and personal care brand. So that one is actually, it's based out of a totally different facility up in Urbana, Iowa. But they do, all essential oils, natural and organic. And then they also do like shower tabs or, body oils or things like that, carrier oils. You can find like Acacia branded diffusers and all those sort of things. In addition to that, some of the other things you were talking about actually come through the co-op side. So while we do sell our brands, we also sell a number of other people's brands, which is where that sort of co-op idea comes back. So our members want to see not only our brands, but they want to see us distribute, hundreds of other brands, including like Seventh Generation or Dr. Bronner's, those sort of things. So as a member, our retail members can purchase those, or our co-op members, I should say, can purchase those products to take back into their stores like that and resell as well. So, but we only personally have those 3 brands, and we only manufacture those 3. And then you were asking about giving. So each of the brands, Acacia and Simply Organic, have their own branded giving programs that are based on, what consumers are looking for when they interact with that product. So the Acacia Positive Change Project was established, I believe, in 2016 with the goal of helping women and girls make transformational changes in their lives. And this is we take a very non-prescriptive way of looking at this. So it's not just like we help women who are coming out of, who are facing substance abuse issues. It's nothing like that. There are a lot of different takes on this and a lot of different organizations that we've supported over the years. But ultimately the goal is helping women who have made a conscious decision to make a change in their life, helping give them the tools and the resources and the experience that they need in order to be successful with that. So in some ways, sometimes it looks like it could be a substance abuse program. It could also be helping women who are facing homelessness through a transitional housing program. Or it could be women who are coming out of a situation of incarceration where they are ready to return to society, but they need some help getting back on their feet, whether that's through family counseling, helping them, be a parent, helping them mend some of their relationships that may have been, they're facing difficult times with their families, with their friends, with their communities, with their jobs, things like that. A lot of the work has to do with helping women become financially stable and secure and independent. So a lot of it will look like, job readiness training, or helping women, prepare a job application or a resume, or helping them get an apprenticeship position or something like that, just to help make sure that they have the tools that they need to be successful. So all in all, I think we've supported, I should have checked this before, I think we've supported about 10 organizations over the last 4 years altogether through that Positive Change Project. So it's really it's a really wonderful opportunity, especially for brands, to get to involve our employees as well. So typically in a normal year, we would have employee review teams come in and they would read through the grants. They go through a training and then they read through the grants, and they sort of make their recommendation to us as to who they believe that we should be supporting. I also read through all of the grants, and then we make a recommendation to brand management, and then we go ahead and pay out those grants every year. So it's an annual grant program. It's very cool. That was another one where I wasn't here for the beginning of it, but they did such a great job of setting it up, and it's really been such an impactful program so far. And then Simply Organic started the Simply Organic Giving Fund many, many, many years ago, and it used to be focused on specifically helping support and expand organic agriculture in the U.S. But recently, and again, this comes back to sustainability being this continuous improvement mindset, it became more and more clear that the brand we really had this responsibility to make sure that everybody has access to organics, that organics, and healthy organic food should not be something that, only the wealthiest people in the country or around the world are able to afford. So it was really important to us to help make sure that we're helping address systemic food insecurity by creating access to healthy and organic food options, which is actually a pretty difficult thing to do. A lot of absolutely no criticism of them at all, but a lot of food insecurity programs, they can't just focus on organics. They need to get people fed. It's a remarkable number of people in the U.S. that are facing food insecurity. Even here in Iowa, I think the number pre-pandemic was like 1 in 6 adults, and it's just really remarkable, and something that a lot of people have the benefit of not having to think about regularly, but it's just something that many people struggle with. So anyway, a few years ago, the Simply Organic Giving Fund switched gears and recommitted itself to helping nourish the millions of food insecure domestically by providing access to healthy and organic food options. And sometimes that has looked like organic hunger relief farms. Sometimes it looks like, there was this last year in 2020, we helped support the Yume Food Share out of Aurora, Colorado. It's out of a project called Project Worth More. But basically it's, they have a large immigrant population there. And so it was really important that they were providing culturally appropriate and culturally specific, organic, healthy food to these communities. And so it's actually run by 2 immigrant women, the food share is, and I had the opportunity to visit them, I think in this last year or so. Gosh, this year has been a weird year, so it may have been last year. I say I've traveled since February, but anyway, it's an amazing program. I'm just so happy to get to be a part of it and get to see some of the incredible work that they're doing. But they do a great job. We also supported a project here in Cedar Rapids that is a pay it forward style cafe, which there are not a lot of them, to be honest. There are not enough of them, I think, across the U.S. But it's such a unique way of addressing systemic food insecurity here in our own community, where basically it works like I'm sorry, it's called Groundswell Cafe, and it's run by Matthew 25, and it's downtown in Cedar Rapids. But the idea is that it works just like any other cafe. You walk in and you can order, breakfast or lunch. I believe it's 5 days a week that they're open, but they're, wraps and sandwiches and salads and soups and all those sort of things. So you go in and you order from like a chalkboard behind the counter, and you get to the end and you pay the cashier, and then they give you a number and you sit down at a table and they bring your food when you're ready. But also any amount that you're able to tip or anything that you're able to contribute additionally over the cost of your meal goes to this Pay It Forward fund. And that allows any single person who is not able to afford an entire meal or anything at all, they can come in and there's just this discreet little ticket that they just like a little slip they pick up by the front door. They order exactly the same way as everybody else. They get to the cashier, and rather than handing them their debit card or cash or whatever, they just hand them this little slip. There's no stigma, there's no paperwork, there's no like asking or giving them any information about you or anything like that. You just pay with that, no questions asked, and then you go sit down. And it's just like everybody else, and it's such a wonderful opportunity to allow the community to pay it forward for their fellow neighbor, someone else in need, without having to donate $100 or $1,000 or whatever. We've contributed $15,000 to get it off the ground, but it's been able to be pretty self-sustaining since then, just through the generosity of people who frequent the cafe and are able to pay full price. So I think right now, unfortunately, I think they were hit by the derecho pretty hard, and so I'm not sure if they're back open yet or not, but they will be, I believe, soon. And so if you ever get a chance to sneak down to Cedar Rapids, you should check it out. But I love this idea of finding creative and just innovative ways to address food insecurity as a community, and that's really what we're looking for with that giving fund. So,
and you said
that was a lot.
That's okay. That was beautiful to know. I didn't know that existed. You said Groundswell Cafe.
Yep.
That sounds like the most wonderful and perfect program. Like you said, I mean, some people can't give $100, but I'll put an extra $2 or $3 on my wrap. Heck yeah. Like it's like the roundup at I used to work at Family Video back in the day, and we did, drives and fundraisers and things like that for organizations that we as, a unit, a single store, and then company wide, we're passionate about. And it's kind of difficult to get people to give on top of their price, whatever they're renting or buying, what have you, but rounding up that 37 cents or even 97 cents, they don't need that change, But like, would you like to put $1 or $2 or $3? It's amazing how much would you like to add $1 versus can you round up your change? Like it plays mind tricks, man. It was really, really interesting to see that, but then to go even farther and have the entire ethos of that cafe be built around giving back. That's just such a beautiful thing. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because no, I'd not heard of it.
Yeah, and it's, food insecurity specifically is something that so many people can experience even for a short time in their life. It's not something that some people experience food insecurity for extended periods of time, and it's, chronic. It's something that lasts from generation to generation. But in many cases, people, especially now with the pandemic, people are one medical bill away or one, utility bill that was like way too high, one storm like the derecho away from dealing with food insecurity themselves and struggling to figure out how they're going to feed their family. Especially now that kids are home too. A lot of kids are home or have been home in the last year. That's 1 or 2 extra meals per kid per day. That's a lot of pressure to put on families. And so I think that it's something that we really, you can tell, food insecurity is something that's like very close to my heart. I could talk on and on about this forever, but it's something that people struggle with, and there is this stigma about asking for help. And I just think that if we can all sort of recognize that it's something that we're not that far away from, any individual one of us are really not that far away from, we can kind of learn to help each other a little bit more. So yeah, I love that program. I'm so happy to get to be part of that sort of selection process and maintaining those relationships long term, because it's just, any day where I find it's like hard to get out of bed, like then I just think about all these incredible people who are doing all this work for their communities. And someday when I grow up, maybe that's what I'll do. I'll actually have to do some frontline work, and I'd love to to do that in the, I want to retire from a nonprofit. How about that?
Sure. There we go. I love that. Oh,
Yeah.
I love your passion for all of this. And when we had our first call to kind of discuss the episode, I mean, it really came through with your passion for the company, but like your eyes, and they did it again, just like lit up when you got to talk about like the zero waste initiative and the sustainable packaging, and especially the giving back programs. I just got goosebumps. It's just one of those things that, and I'm getting a little emotional here. That's like, I didn't even know this cafe existed, and it everyone just wants to be treated like the beautiful human being that they are. And it is true. So many of us are close to that financial instability or mental instability when just one catastrophe can put us over the edge of something that we're going to need to ask for help with. And asking for help is hard. And there's a weird kind of shame. I'll use the S word. There's a weird shame around it that just shouldn't be there. And the fact that, especially Groundswell, that you've been able to create this opportunity that they give you a ticket. They don't have to ask. Here's my program payment. Thank you for existing, and thank you for feeding me, because that's a really big deal. Oh man. Here we go.
Like, this has been an impossible year. It really has, for so many people. And so, I mean, I know in my household alone, like my husband and his sister both live, here at my home with me, and they both work in restaurants. And it's, for many times, there have been many weeks this year where they've been out of work because they have to be, because, restaurants had to close, and it's not just restaurants, there's a lot of other places, people facing this sudden pay cut or just complete loss of income. And, we're lucky because I have another job that is not I can sit in my office, and I can, I'm very fortunate to be able to do that. But there are just so many people that are just, they're struggling, and it's just, we all need to just allow each other a little bit of grace, this year. Like, if nothing else, just a little bit of grace. And I think that these community programs are just such a wonderful way of allowing each other that, without making it be about you. It's not about you donating that extra $2. It's about knowing that you're offering just a break to somebody who just needs a break. They just need an organic, healthy breakfast to start their day. Like, it's such a special program, and I'm very proud of it. So
I'm going to have to make it down there at some point, post pandemic. Obviously, I'm not doing a whole lot of traveling right now, even to Cedar Rapids, but I would love to come down and even have an episode revolve around the cafe. I think that would just be something that would bring a light to a lot of people that need a good story, that need a good heartwarming news, and not more bad news. There's plenty of bad news out there. Yes. Alicia and I are emotional. It's okay, guys. Don't worry about it. We're fine.
It's an emotional year. Okay? It's, a little bit.
I think so too. Oops, as I almost knocked my microphone off. Oh my goodness. Well, so your lasting suggestion has definitely been to just give everybody a little bit more grace, and have that opportunity to keep growing and keep expanding. Do you have any additional advice, whatever it may be, for consumers, or for those who are, we're all consumers, aren't we? For those who are interested in maybe how they can help with a giving back program, or what they can do to support sustainable sourcing and help with the waste dilemma or the recycling dilemma. I feel like this whole episode you've had just the most beautiful nuggets of wisdom. Do you have anything else to add? Anything at all?
No, I think that it's very good that in some ways, we've all been able to slow down a little bit this year for periods of time. In some ways, it just feels like it keeps running. But this ability to sort of slow down and think about the impact that you, as a consumer, that your dollars can have in terms of not only purchasing, mission-driven products or things like that, but in terms of the impact that you personally can have in your community, whether that's through giving or whether that's through donating your time. There are just so many. Our state is, especially here in Cedar Rapids, we still have so much work to do after the derecho. Our community was hit so hard there, and it doesn't matter where you go. It could be if you live in California or Oregon or Washington or Colorado, or even in the South or out east after one of the hurricanes. There's always something that you can do. And just think about that and think about what you can do there. But at the same time, I think on a personal level, I would like to just throw it out there that while you should be mindful and you should be careful and, thoughtful about what you're doing, and it is important that we all give each other a little bit of grace, I think it's also very important that we remember to give ourselves a little bit of grace too. It's an incredibly difficult year, and if you need something, or if you need a little bit of help, if you need a break, whether it's food access or mental health access or anything like that, if you need a leg up with finding a job or finding some sort of income for you and your family, there are so many services out there, and there's so many good people out there who are looking to help. So please don't ever hesitate to reach out. You can reach out to me personally, but you can also, at your local United Way, and they can always help you find the services that you need. So just be gentle on yourself, be kind to yourself, and just try to offer yourself and everybody else a little bit of grace while we all get through this. That's it.
That is the most beautiful suggestion. We're all just emotional over here. Oh, but that is, it's true. And it's heartfelt, I know, from you and from me and from truly anyone we've had on this show. And, I'm not just this podcast, guys. There's a whole production team behind me. We got 4 or 5 people that are involved with this. And I'm so thankful to get to talk to who I get to talk to and work with these guys at Ethical Consumer and Fresh Fuel, because they're just some of the best people. And it's true. It's so true. Everything you said. Oh, mic drop. Mic drop. Oh my goodness. So we can find more information on these beautiful programs at frontiercoop.com. And you have a wonderful Instagram page as well, Frontier Co-op. Easy to find, and we'll, of course, be sharing all of those things. And then, guys, go ahead and look into some of these programs as well. Groundswell Cafe, ask for grace for yourself, give it to others. And we're just going to keep doing what we can do, because that's kind of the bottom line, too, is doing what we can to make the world a better place, whether that's through proper recycling and education on recycling, composting, and just, being a good human and taking care of everybody. That's, to a cooperative. That is our lives. It's not just a business, and it's not just retail. It's not just agricultural. That is how we are meant to be as a species. So hopefully, going into this season, this is the most emotional episode I think I've ever done. Thank you. It's wonderful. No, I absolutely love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Alicia, for being on and talking with me and sharing more about Frontier and bearing your soul and your vulnerability through clearly your passion for all of these things, because that really shines through. And that, I think, is so meaningful for everyone to just see and hear and know what a good job is going on here in Norway, Iowa, in the Cedar Rapids, Cedar Falls, Waterloo area. We're doing some good stuff. So thank you so much for being on.
And thanks for giving me sort of a platform to talk about some of these great organizations that are doing this work. So it's wonderful to get to highlight them a little bit
Most
in the work.
definitely.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, viewers. I hope you've enjoyed this. Maybe you shed a few tears too, but smile and know that good work is being done. And we will see you next time on The Ethical Consumer.